Yeah, let me give you a perfect example. This used to be a really valuable Canon EOS 1D Mark II camera. And this is why you need to take really good care of your camera. By the way, it doesn't matter if it's a mirrorless or a DSLR. By the way, you should never touch the reflex mirror. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this apart, and even though it's an older camera, the sensor, assembly, and main board are still of value. I'm going to extract some important parts out of this camera, but a piece of debris, could have been sand, could have been a large grit particle that hovers around in the air. It usually transfers in the back of the lens into the mirror box in the case of a DSLR. Transfers just the same, actually transfers more easily into a mirrorless camera because there's no mirror box for the dirt or the sand grain. Let me zoom in here a little bit. To travel, to reach the shutter mech, and it doesn't matter if it is, by the way, a mirrorless or a DSLR, the shutter mechs are all made of the same stuff, Teflon coated Kevlar in almost all cases today. Let me do a little focus here. And here you go, see that? Now, this is the second curtain there. The blade is warped. If you actually slide it up, it doesn't actually match with that track number. The track along the other shutter blades. You can see how fragile these are. I'm going to touch it off here to the side. Very fragile, but you see this does not line up with that. What happens is that when you get a piece of grit or a sand inside your focus, there we go, piece of grit or sand inside your camera, since the shutter blades, both first and second curtain, are reciprocating extremely fast, whether it even be at a slow shutter speed, what it does is it causes a warp in these shutter blades. Like I said, this crease up here on that top shutter blade does not line up with that scratch. That scratch is the piece of debris that moved from the mirror box right here in the case of a DSLR. Usually dust or grit will get trapped. You can even see it right here along the side, and then it'll make its way in. On Nikons, it's actually a better felt line than on this expensive Canon EOS D. EOS D has the EOS D Mark II. But it'll travel in there and it'll hit the shutter blades, and that's what actually left that scratch track mark on those shutter blades. And it caused the top blade to bind and basically almost cut itself in half. And this would have been a $450 replacement on the shutter mech, including labor, and it would take an enormous amount of labor to get apart. A lot of labor to get apart, and so basically it makes the camera uneconomical to repair. But it's not uneconomical for me to take the main board and sensor assembly out, but the slightest little piece of grit, you have no idea how fragile. Let me touch it. Yeah, you see how fragile that is? Really, really, really very, very fragile. It's actually more fragile than a piece of paper. I kid you not. Even though it is, well, there's a pull strength, resiliency that's greater than paper, but the actual tear and warpage is about the same as a piece of paper. And it's actually amazing that you can get that many reciprocations out of a shutter assembly. Like the new Fujifilm X-T4 over here, for example, is rated for 300,000. And like modern Nikon D5 is rated for, of course, it could be a lot less than that. It could be a lot longer than that. The reason why shutter mechs last so long is because people essentially keep their cameras clean. When dust falls in there and a piece of grit, whether it be a piece of sand or whether it be a piece of grit of some kind, hits those shutter blades, they warp. And when they warp at high speed, and any shutter actuation is very, very high speed. When they warp at high speed, they deform. And when they deform, that's it. Kaput. Gone. You know, it's over with. And you're talking about a lot of labor and a $200 shutter mech, and depends on who does it and the camera it is, between $400 and $600 for replacing the shutter mech. It's a lot of labor. You got to tear the whole damn camera apart. So just remember that. And this applies to whether it be DSLR or mirrorless. There's no distinction here on how fragile the shutter mech is. Yeah, maybe you could remember that. This is the reason why it's so important to keep the butt end of your lenses so clean. Yeah, and clean off your end caps, your lens caps, the mount cap specifically and especially, because people take the end cap from their lenses, you know, I think you know what the end cap is, right? Not the body cap. Well, the body cap too. The body cap, definitely the body cap, but also too the end caps of your lenses. People put this in their pocket, and the garbage goes from in here, acts like a trash barrel. You put it on the back of your lens, and when you mount your lens on, that crap falls in, and then the garbage lands on your shutter mech, and it destroys your camera. Essentially, destroys your camera. Yeah, maybe you could keep that in mind. Okay? Goodbye.